Welcome back. Now that we've gotten some experience manipulating objects, it's time to take a look at some of the other parts to our level editor. Our viewport does take up the majority of the space, but it's by no means the most important. Now, we've already seen to the right we have this outliner. And the outliner contains a list of all the objects in the world. And as you can see, some of them are organized into folders. These folders have the ability to be collapsed or expanded with drop-downs. Now, the objects that we've just added, such as these bush static meshes, are not in their own folders because I just dragged them into the world. Now, I can select any one of these from the outliner panel, and you'll see that they actually get selected here in the world. And in the outliner panel, notice there's an eye icon. If I click that, I can no longer see that object in the viewport. So we can hide multiple objects with that eye icon. We can even remove objects from the world by selecting them in the outliner and pressing delete. So we can clean up a level really easily. Let's say I want to remove all the bushes in the level. Well, I can make sure that I get them all by filtering the outliner with our search bar here. I can type bush, and now I see all the objects in the world that have bush in their name. And I can click the first one, hold shift and click the last one, and I have all the bushes selected, and I can simply hit delete on the keyboard, and they're all gone from the world. Now, sometimes our worlds are going to get very large, and it can be hard to find objects. We can always search for them here in the outliner as we've seen. Let's say I don't know where my chair is, so I'm going to search for chair. And I see the static meshes folder. If I expand that, there are 2 chairs here. Now, I know where they are thanks to my large, beautiful viewport, but let's say I didn't know where they were. If I select one of them in the outliner, I can focus in on this chair by hitting the F key. And notice my view in the viewport has shifted, and now I'm right here in front of this chair. I'm focused in on it. And I can select the other chair and hit F, and I'll focus in on that one. I'm going to clear that filter there. Now, all these other objects that we see that just came with our level by default, these exist in the outliner as well. Now, we can select them individually by clicking on them in the viewport. Notice that this one here that looks like a speaker icon is now highlighted in the outliner because I've selected it. And we see that it's called Starter Background Cue. And notice to the right, each of these objects has its own type. This one has the type Ambient Sound. So when we pressed play and we heard the sounds of our level, those sounds are coming from this ambient sound. If we were to, say, select this ambient sound and hit the delete key to remove it, well, now if we press play, it's silent. There's no more sound. And of course, I can hit Control Z to undo the deletion of that, and now I have my ambient sound back. So now we know what one of these icons is. Let's select another. How about this one here? Now, as soon as I select that, in the outliner, we have Skylight highlighted, and its type is Skylight. Now, if we hide this by clicking on the eye icon, notice that the ground is darker. And we can toggle this on and off to see what our skylight is doing. A skylight provides lighting for the entire level. It's sort of a baseline lighting level for our world, and it even affects indoor areas where the sun can't penetrate. Now, we also have a light source. If we toggle visibility for this, we'll see that the whole scene gets dark. And if we select it here in the outliner and press F, we'll focus in on it. Now, I'm still in object scale mode, but I'm going to hit the E key so I can rotate this. And if I do, notice that as I'm rotating the light source, the shadows are shifting on the ground. So this light source is directional. It's more akin to the type of light source that behaves more like a sun. So now we know what that object is. Now I'm going to click on one of these circles, and I see in the outliner that it's a sphere reflection capture. A sphere reflection capture behaves like a spherical mirror for light. It reflects light, allowing areas around it to be well lit, as the sphere reflection capture bounces light from the light source to illuminate the areas around it. So you can place these in various areas of the world to enhance the lighting in those locations. And they have a radius. If I zoom out with this sphere reflection capture, I'll see that there's a sphere surrounding it, marking its influence. So now we know what those are. Now that leaves this strange symbol here that looks like a console controller with a flag. Now, as soon as I selected it, we see this outline here in the shape of a capsule. This object that I just selected is a player start, and we see that its type here in the outliner is player start. Player starts provide a starting point for when we play test the game. That's why when we press play, we start off in the location of that player start, right there. So the outliner allows us to organize the objects in our world and even keep them in their own folders. We'll be making use of the outliner throughout our careers in Unreal Engine. Now, below the outliner, I'm clicking this gray line so I can bring up this lower section. And I have two panels here, and I can swap by clicking their respective tabs. The leftmost is Details. Now, the Details panel provides information for a specific object that we have selected. Now, I'm going to select one of these objects in the world. Let's select this hovering chair. Now, in the Details panel, we have lots of information, and we're going to be going over this in a lot more detail throughout the course. But one of the things I'd like to show you here in the Details panel is under the Transform section. We have Location, Rotation, and Scale. Location gives us world coordinates in world space that tell us the location of this chair. Now, with the chair selected, if I hit W to go into translation mode, notice as I move the chair up and down, in the Details panel, the Z component of its location changes. See that? We can even enter manual values for the X, Y, and Z components of the location here in the Details panel. If I enter 150, now my chair's Z position is set to 150. And we can do the same thing for rotations. I can enter a 0 for the Z component of its rotation, and now it's facing forward in the world X direction. And of course, we can scale objects this way as well. I can scale this object by 2, and if I enter a 2 and hit Tab, I'll now be focused on the next component over, which is the Y. If I hit a 2 and hit Tab again, I'm now focused on the Z, and I can hit 2 and enter, and now I have a chair that's scaled by 2. Now the curved arrow next to these three values has a tooltip that says reset this property to its default value. If I click that, they all go back to 1 because this chair has a default scale value of 111. Now the Details panel has different icons for the different sections of the Details panel. Let's click on Physics. Now this particular chair in the Physics section has different properties we can change. If I check Simulate Physics, we will now have physics enabled for this chair, and if I press play, notice the chair falls to the ground. That's because gravity works when we're simulating physics for a given object. And even gravity itself can be disabled by unchecking the checkbox next to Enable Gravity. Now, if I press play, the chair hovers there. But if I fly into it and hit it, notice it's now floating out into the distance. It can react to forces by slamming into it, and I actually have the ability to alter its position when I'm flying around in the pie, but gravity is not acting on it. So the Details panel is very handy for accessing properties of a selected object. Now the last panel I'd like to discuss is our content drawer again. We've already seen how it works, how to pull it up and hide it, and we've dragged in static meshes by simply clicking on them in the content drawer and dragging them out into the world. Now the content drawer shows us the folder structure of our project. All assets, such as static meshes, exist in our content folder. And the chairs, the bushes, all these objects we see here are contained within our starter content folder. Notice there are lots of different folders for the various files that make up these assets. Very soon, however, I'm going to show you how to get your hands on a huge library of much more detailed and extravagant assets when we start to make our very own realistic level. So we'll do that soon. But for now, This is a great stopping point. We know about the panels in our level editor, and we now have the basic skills to manipulate objects in our world and organize them in the outliner. And we've seen that we can change properties of selected objects in the details panel. We'll discuss the world settings panel soon enough, so don't worry about that. We'll get into that in a future video. But hopefully now the engine is slowly, piece by piece, becoming more and more demystified. Great job. I'll see you in the next lecture.